Yes, she went to San Diego first.
And then,
And I was assigned up to the Officers Training School in San Francisco.
I see. So it was a little while before you came down.
So I was sent back to the Utah outfit to join them to come down here,
Uh-huh.
which no one ever dreamed was going to happen.
When you went back to Utah, you didn't know you were going to come to San
Some
Diego.
people may think that things happen by accident, but I have a feeling that they don't. I don't see how it could happen. We left Mount Pleasant together, and when I was sent to the Utah outfit, I was assigned to come down here to train at Camp Kearney in San Diego. Well, when that happened, of course, president of the mission was a man by the name of, let me think for a minute.
President Robinson.
President Robinson of the mission was assigned here, and he had been in the legislature with C.W. Sorensen, and they were great friends. So when he knew that Ruby was down here on a mission in San Diego, and that I was here in the Army, he thought it wise that the Sorensens come down here. So he got the church to call them on a mission. So Grandpa and Grandma Sorensen came down to San Diego to spend the winter on a mission. And they rented a home near to the First Mormon Branch Chapel on 10th Street in San Diego.
The Genealogical Society now.
Mm-hmm. It was a little chapel then, and they had some great meetings there. Some of the noble authorities of the church were there, including President Joseph F. Smith. Visited there, and B.H. Roberts gave speeches there on Sundays. And it was a rich experience. He was our chaplain in Utah.
B.H. Roberts was?
B.H. Roberts. And we took a hike at one time out to La Jolla, and he stood out on a rock in the bay, the water all around him, and told us about some of the things of the Mormon Battalion, of which he was a part.
He was a member?
Well,
I didn't know that.
Well, now, I'm not sure whether he was a member or whether his folks were, but at any rate, he was...
well, he was a historian, and I'm sure he knew a lot about it.
He knew all the details of that mission, and he also recited poetry. And those who know B.H. Roberts know that he was one of the great scholars that the church has had. And
I knew that.
An orator he was. Well, I could tell quite a lot of things about that, but...
well, anyway, then how long were you here while Mother was here?
We were here about, not quite 9 months, about 8 months, I guess. And then I took the tests to qualify for further training, and I was sent to Kentucky.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And
what part of Kentucky?
Ruby was transferred up to Los Angeles.
And you went back to Kentucky. Where in Kentucky?
To Louisville, Kentucky. And we were at Camp Taylor. And I think I told you something the other day about my experience with Governor Mabry down there.
You mentioned, yes.
Well, that wasn't Louisville. That was down in Fort Sill later. But at any rate, that's where I went to Camp Taylor, and that's where I was commissioned finally and assigned down to South Carolina.
Then you didn't come back to San Diego after that?
No, I didn't come back to San Diego at all after that.
So the next that you saw Mother was back in Utah.
I should tell you about after the training in up at San Francisco Presidio, up at the Presidio, which is the Army camp at San Francisco, California, and there after they gave us a furlough and for 2 weeks, and during that time I didn't have anything to do around San Francisco, so I bought a ticket to on the boat. They ran 2 boats between San Francisco and San Diego. One was the Harvard and the other one was Yale. They were in a way vacation boats. Mm-hmm. They had a dance on cruises every day a night on the boat, and it may be interesting to know that I paid $22 return fare
round trip
from San Francisco to San Diego. I came down and stayed at the big hotel here,
U.S. Grant, wasn't
U.S. Grand Hotel for a week.
Mm-hmm. And at that time Mother was here, right?
Yes, and during that time the missionaries had a party. We went out to Ocean Beach swimming one day. Mm-hmm. At that time they allowed the missionaries to swim.
Right.
And that's the first time I ever jumped breakers and had the fun of bathing in the ocean. Mm-hmm. Well, during that period of time was when Mother and I went to Ramona's marriage place. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't long following the time when the book Ramona came out. And of course we read the novel, and of course most young people were rather thrilled about it at that time.
Yeah, it's a lovely story. It's beautiful, in fact.
We went through the garden and dropped coins into the wishing well. So now,
did you propose to Mother at that time?
Then we went in and sat on the benches in the little chapel, and there it was that we talked about getting married.
Mm-hmm. And then it was after that week then that you left and went to Kentucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I would have gotten married at that time, but of course that would have meant that Ruby couldn't finish her mission. Mm-hmm. So we agreed that we would continue on and keep touch, and I went east and she went to San Francisco.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess you corresponded after that.
Oh yes, I hardly ever wrote letters or anything, but I wrote quite a few cards and put a lot on them. And I wrote a few letters too.
So how long was it then until you came back to Utah?
Well, again, it seems rather a coincidence, but it happened that we were both released about the same time. And we came into Salt Lake. I think I arrived a little earlier in the day than she did on the train. And she came in from the west, and we met at Andrew Jensen's, the church historian's place. And there she stayed overnight.
Mm-hmm. My goodness. Well, before we leave your thing in San Diego, when you were here together, when she was here officially and you were here officially, now she was of course busy working and everything, but at that time there weren't all the rules about missionaries, so you did actually do some courting at that time, didn't you?
Yes, we used to walk home from church together, and I had many meals on weekends. In fact, I'd come in on the weekend and sleep down in the basement of the church with the missionaries.
Mm-hmm. Did you sleep on beds, or did you just...
They had beds there, and I shared the bed with the missionaries, some of the missionaries. And there it was, I became friends with who a man later became superintendent of schools in Provo City, and he was the presiding elder for a time.
And what was his name?
Clifton Moffett.
Mm-hmm. I've heard you mention him.
So I had a great time.
Yes, yes.
Favored position.
Now, did you say that was 6 months that you spent here?
It was more than that. It was from October until sometime in June. I can't remember the exact day that she left. But while she was up there, I made one trip up there to see her. And they had a home up on I remember you had to go up a stairway to get to their apartment upstairs. There were about 4 or 6 women, girls there, missionaries. And I went up there, I'd gone in on the train. Well, in fact, the reason I had gone was to accompany the body of Ralph Brady, who was drowned on Ocean Beach.
I remember hearing about that too.
Orson was
Where was he from? Was he from Mount Pleasant?
No, Orson, his brother, was to go with him, but he'd have been alone entirely all the journey. So they thought it was wise for me to, since I wanted to go up to Los Angeles, that I should ride that far with them. So I did. And I came in on the train. And I went to the home and knocked on the door downstairs, and nobody came, and I knew that Ruby was there. And I went up and quietly up the steps, and everybody seemed to be quiet and sleeping, I guess. But there was someone laying over on the couch with their eye faced to the wall. And I went over there and tapped her, and I didn't realize that this lady was sleeping there in her garments. She wasn't uncovered. I realized she didn't have her waist on. I felt kind of embarrassed.
Yeah.
And this was Jane Greer from.
She was one of the lady missionaries, though.
And of course, Elva Hunt, of course, was the main companion for Ruby when she was down in San Diego. I shouldn't go into the history of Elva Hunt, but a lot of things happened to kind of tie up later. Elva Hunt was quite an aristocratic type of person. She was raised in a wealthy family up in San Francisco. Very dark, probably had some Jewish blood in her. She was a rather thin, rather aristocratic girl, rather proud too, I think. But she was the main partner for Ruby while she was here in San Diego. Later she had May Muir. Used to read about her occasionally in newspapers in Utah.
She was a Utah. Okay. Well, maybe we
read about these people. You know, their names came out in the paper.
Oh, I see. So you'd read about her.
If we did something in Mount Pleasant, it was in the newspapers. We don't get any of that anymore. You know, when Mother was correspondent for the newspaper, when she wrote all of these articles, it had some meaning, would interest the people out in that section because they felt like it was more their paper if they occasionally had a part in it. Whenever we had graduation exercise and things like that, they would print it, something about programs and so on.
Right.
Yeah, it's not going.
Yeah, it is. It's going now. I might say that this is a new day. We finished our recording we stopped recording the other day because it was getting a little noisy. It's now the 28th, isn't it? Yeah, the 28th today. And it's fairly quiet around here, so we're going to do a little more recording. I'd like to go back and pick up some things that we missed, that we've talked about since then. You were telling me a little bit ago that for a while you moved out of that house when you were young in Mount Pleasant, while you were building on to the old house.
While they were building a new addition and taking off the old shanty, we moved out to Main Street and lived there for a couple of years.
Oh, that long?
While they were building a house.
How old were you then, about?
As I remembered, I was about 9 years old.
And this was an old family home?
It was a one-story adobe house that had been built in the early days of the city's history. And the family lived there, of course, for some time until they started to marry off. And
this would have been your grandmother's house then, your grandmother Syndergaard?
Marie Syndergaard's home. When she brought her 6 children there. And John married in 1881, as we note in this record.
Well, they came in 1881, didn't they?
And he built a house just on the lot to the east. And there was also a lumber house built of a couple of rooms between the two buildings, between the old place and John's home on the east. And John was a blacksmith, and he had his shop down on the west end of the large lot there, right up against the sidewalk on Main Street. And there that stood for years and was used by Gertrude's, the youngest daughter, married Chris Johansson. He was also a blacksmith, and as they lived there, he carried on the blacksmith work for that time.
I see. And the home was right there by the blacksmith shop.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, how far west was this? Was it down by the depot, or was
It's a block east of the depot. Block and a half, actually. There in the center of the lot was.
I see.
The station agent lived on the lot west of there. The house is still standing, I believe, where Webb Green lived. And Ada worked for Webb Green, and others that had lived there before. She was an older girl, you know. And
you were telling me that while you were...
It's while we were living there that we contracted, in fact there was an epidemic over the city of scarlet fever. And they used to, instead of having a quarantine sign, they used to hang flags. Like for scarlet fever, it was a yellow flag that hung on the gateposts to warn people against coming in there and getting exposed to the disease.
But you didn't get scarlet fever at that time. Was it later?
No, I got it later.
Scarlet fever is it a terribly dangerous disease, or just a very...
Well, as I remember, Maisel was seriously ill with the scarlet fever. And I stood outside the house when the nurses and people were working with Maisel. They would, in order to take the fever down from its high temperature, they would bathe them in cold water. And keep on with bathing them. And perhaps their working with her saved her, because she was seriously ill at that time.
Did you all have to miss school because of the scarlet fever epidemic? Did they close the schools, or how did they work that? Do you remember?
I think this siege that we had was during the summer months, so it was when school wasn't closed. If it was serious, of course, they did close schools.
During an epidemic?
No, it was while we lived there on Main Street that I was going to school, and they were putting in the waterworks over the town, and several places in the town they had crossed the street by tunneling under where the buggies and wagons went. They tunneled under to leave that part, but they had these open trenches on the side, and Father, being the city marshal, his job was to set out lanterns at night to guide people when they came along the streets there. And my job was at noon to collect these lanterns and take them down to the city hall, where they were replenished with oil and lighted again the next day. And there I earned my first $1. And for 50 cents of that $1, I bought one of these stiff hats. I call them straw duffies.
So they used oil then in lanterns when you were little?
They used kerosene lanterns to set out on the roads.
Where did the kerosene come from at that time? It's kind of interesting with our oil prices today.
Yeah, it was shipped in there.
It was shipped in?
We called it coal oil at that time.
Did it come from coal?
Well,
does kerosene mean it comes from coal?
Gas and these oils are connected pretty much with minerals, you know. But they called it coal oil. And we used to have a little can, about a gallon can, that they would buy the coal oil in, and it was sold up at the San Pete Co-op, it was called. We did most of our trading at San Pete Co-op.
You know, I remember when we had those kerosene lanterns when I was a little girl. You'd go out, and after it got the dark of winter, I don't think you used them much in the summer, but in the dark of winter, that's how you'd do your chores.
We'd take it out, that's right, and set it by the side while we milked the cow and so on.
Right. Now that you mention it, I remember those kerosene lanterns.
I maybe should tell you that we had mumps while we were out there too. And I did have mumps. I wasn't sure whether it was on both sides or just one. And I always worried a little about I might get mumps again.
On the other side. Now, when you went to live there, was your grandmother still living? Your grandmother?
No,
she had died by then.
She died around 1900.
So you hardly knew your grandmother, Cindergarden.
All I remember of grandmother is that I went to the funeral, and Father and John Knudsen together hired a buggy that had 2 seats in it, front and back. And because I was very young, this was before we moved, of course, when I was just a baby. But I was old enough to remember going to the funeral to bury grandmother Jensen. Now that's one of the first things that I remember of in my life.
Was your grandmother's funeral or going to it?
I remember that. And I remember burying Aunt Thea too, who was George Tristan's wife.
Now, one of the things that I may be confusing people, I keep calling her Cindergard, but her last name, that was her unmarried name, wasn't it? That was her maiden name, Cindergard.
Anne-Marie Cindergard that was her maiden name. Of course, on the records here it says Jensen, along with Anne-Marie Cindergard Jensen.
Because she married.
She married Simon Christian Jensen.
Okay. You were telling me yesterday about an incident that I thought would be fun to hear about. When you were really little, and did you destroy a doll or something of your sister's?
While we were living in that two-roomed house, one time I remember, not so long after Christmas, when we had received our toys and all, that I locked myself in the north room, which was at that time the bedroom, and all of us slept in that room at that time. We weren't numerous at that time. You see, I was the third child, and we might have had one more at that time. I'm not sure. But Ada had been given a doll, and I locked myself in there, and I had the drum, and just got a drum with drumsticks, and I used those on the doll and broke her head to pieces. And I didn't dare tell the folks about it, so I locked myself in there, and they couldn't get me to open it. But finally they took an axe and pried the window on the north side up enough so they could enter and get me out of there.
Do you remember if you got punished for it?
No, I don't think I did.
Maybe.
As I say, I only remember Father giving me a trouncing once when I came home late from school.
Well, I was wondering if there was anything else we should talk about in your youth while we're here. We can always come back to it, you know. This doesn't have to be a consecutive tape.
The thrills of our childhood was during the threshing season, when right after school was out in the afternoon, we would hear the old threshing machine engine whistle, and that meant that they were somewhere in the neighborhood of town threshing, and for us kids to be allowed to get up on this steam engine and pull the string that blew the whistle, the steam whistle, was really something. And sometimes we were allowed to do that. And even Father would take us up, if it weren't too many, he'd take someone up there once in a while and get to ride on the steam engine, which was pulling the threshing machine along till it got to the stacks. They stacked all their grain then in bundles, and they fixed the bundles down and fed them into they had two men standing up when they fed from both sides. They had two men standing up on the feeder to put the bundles in and see that they got in head first.
And then this took the kernels off, didn't it? The kernels.
That thrashed the wheat, the grain out, and then it would go to the top by an elevator and would drop down a little chute into the sacks. And later, as I worked on the machine, I used to do the sacking. And there's a little handle on that chute that had two openings so that they'd hang a sack on one side and a sack on the other side, and when the one got full, they'd slip
it over to the next.
Slip the handle over to the other side and take that full sack off and tie it up with a twine, and then put a new sack on there while the other one was filling.
Filling with wheat.
And that's the way we handled it. And we always took wheat or grain at 8 bushels on the 100. Out of every 100 bushels that we threshed, they would take out 8 bushels to pay for the machine.
Oh, I see.
And
now this is the machine that you're talking about that your father used to thresh for people.
That's right. And I don't know whether I should get to that now about following the threshing machine when I was in high school.
Oh no, go ahead.
But later, as I was in high school, to get money, I went along with the machine, and I even stayed out of school for a month or so to work on the thresher, so I'd have money to go to high school. And I kept the track of all the toll grain. We had the granary up in Indianola. We filled full of grain.
Your father did?
And we would go up there with a wagon and our little team of ponies and get a load of wheat occasionally to bring down to sell. And but by doing this, I was able to supplement my income a little. In fact, I was rather blessed at that time to have quite a liberal amount of money.
Yes. Now, Grandpa must have done this just part of the year, and then he sheared sheep and
sheep
farmed
until the late summer. Then he would come home, and he'd always be there in time to prepare the thrashing machine. They always had to go over it and repair all the loose parts and so on. And in that time, the straw was blown out of a pipe, and they could move that pipe around and stack the straw, where beforehand they used to shovel it back with a pitchfork. But now they had this blower, and that was good always until they got into threshing of wet grain or green bundles. And then sometimes that blower would clog up, and they had to pull a part of it out loose till they cleared the pipe. And then would shoot the straw out there right behind the machine.
And make a stack, like a straw stack?
Oh, they always stacked the straw.
Right. What did
because they'd feed that in the winter.
They fed the straw?
Fed it to cows.
Oh, yeah.
Even horses.
I remember the straw stacks, but I guess I didn't really realize.
Well, up on the dry farm, you see, they would, wherever they had a setting, all around they had settings of the straw stacks, and they stack it a row on each side so the machine could come between, so they could feed from both sides on the elevator.
Didn't they use the straw too for keeping the animals warm? It seemed to me like in the winter they'd make a straw area for the cows to lay in. And
they almost bedded them down in straw, and that worked all right until some of the late or heavy winters when the snow would come down, the sheds would leak down and make quite a mess of things. That's when we had to be very careful about our milking, you see, to keep the cattle bedded so that they wouldn't come up too dirty. Because if they had lain in the wet manure, it
contaminate
see
the
what
milk.
would happen. And sometimes they made a fuss at the cheesery where the milk was sold, you see, if there came to be too much stuff in the milk. You can understand what a problem that could be.
Okay.
Because of
Dad, you were telling me about your father writing letters home when he went away to thresh and to shear. To shear, yeah.
Mostly in Wyoming and Idaho and Montana. But when he would regularly, before I ever went with him, he used to write letters home.
Go ahead, Dad.
He would write those letters in Danish, so the children couldn't read them.
Now, your mother could speak Danish?
Mother could. She was born of Danish parents and pioneers, and
she
spoke the Danish, and so they had a way of communicating that was soundproof.
Now, did they speak in Danish to each other a lot when they didn't want you to hear?
Sometimes, yes, quite frequently, in fact. But the heading I could figure out. It said, Care Hustrag Bern. Now, that was the Danish.
Mm-hmm. And what did that mean?
That meant dear wife and children.
Mm-hmm.
See, that fits.
Yeah.
Well, they usually had in the check too, because that's the way they would write every couple of weeks and send the money that they had earned so far and get a check from the owner of the sheep. And of course we always looked forward to getting those letters, and we would get them, even open them up sometimes before we got home from the post office. But it was always the same. Tear us, Lord.
Yeah. But you couldn't read most of it.
No, but it was written in the Danish style too.
Mm-hmm.
They have a special, just like the old English.
Mm-hmm.
There's something like that with the Danish too. And so it was, we knew the type of writing always. We could tell what it was, and a few things we could figure out. It wasn't much.
Did he ever write in English later on?
Yes, he could write in English too.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't very fluent, but he could do that.
Mm-hmm. Now, someone told me, I don't remember this because I didn't pay that much attention as a child, but someone told me that your father still had a little bit of an accent.
Yeah, always retained that Danish. You could tell he was a foreign-born person because he of that Danish accent.
We have to clean this car out. Deco. All that over there. Come on, Josh. Bye. You like sitting in the back, don't you? Come on, Josh. Can you sit back here with Mama? Here. Oh. Where's Mommy? Your Mommy. Aren't you driving? No, Steve is. Oh, I'm going to drive. No, Steve's coming. Because I want to sit in the back with the kids. No, not in the car. Not in the car. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We don't want to lose them. Oh, you should have seen. I learned how to bake an apple pie tonight, Steve. A good apple pie by Sister Thompson. The best apple pie. I mean, one of the best kind of apple pie you will ever taste in your life. I learned the secret of making a good crust. A good, flaky crust.
Sure.
Isn't that fantastic? What?
I was just thinking, if I should get that Gilbert policy, and he sounded more favorable tonight than he did today. That's who I was just talking to.
Yeah?
Don't we, what do we get, 50%? This will be a 10-year term. How much commission do we get?
I don't know. I haven't been figuring commission. I don't know.
I think we get 1 count for $5, and the commission is like 40% the first year.
I think, it's 50.
Well, not on the term.
Oh, yeah. Term is 45.
Okay, well, the premium would be, depending on how it goes, would be $1,000 a year.
And 40% of that would be how much?
About 400. That'll be about 80 count.
Wow! And that means another place in China. So 250 term would be how much adjusted? Let's see, 60, 120, 120, and then 50 is how much? 40% of 50 is how much? 60% of 50 is how much? What's 40% of 50?
60% of 50 is the same as 50% of 60 to 30.
30. Yeah, 150 exactly will be adjusted. That means we'll have 4 place sittings. We have 2. We earned another one this quarter. Look, for all the lighthouse.
Don't count the chickens, but
we did.
It's an exciting thought, isn't it?
4. I've always wanted the 4. We get free Guam China for every so much life insurance and stuff, and I really want 2 pieces. 2 place settings, 2 5-piece place settings. Now I got the 3rd one. You got your brights on. That is fantastic.
Really, it's a $250,000 policy. Oh, really? I love that.
You'd love it. I'd love it.
Well, Pam, I'm sure glad that you hung in there. I called Gilbert's at 5 to 9. I had intended to put the kids in bed about 9. You know, I thought I'll just take a few minutes, maybe 5, 8 minutes. I need here. Well, shoot, when I asked him square footage, he had to research it, he had to measure it, you know. And it ended up to be a long call. And so I didn't keep my promise to Pam to put him in bed at 15 minutes.
Well, the only reason why they might have been really rowdy is because we left them all day, you know. They're the sitters all day, and they come home and they totally unwind. Oh, Sarah. They're like little
But I know it was a little hard, wasn't it, Pam?
You can be honest, because I'm their mother, and I say it's very hard. It takes me so long. This time we only had soup and salad tonight. It takes me so long to cook dinner because they're both hanging on me. I want this. I want that. Give me this.
Well, the thing is, what's easy is when they're asleep.
Yeah, this one is easy.
And last time they were asleep, which is nice. But this time they weren't asleep at all. It wasn't too easy this time. What we really want to know is if you're ready for more, Pam.
Not tonight, of course.
You ready for more?
Oh, good. Because you know why? Have you been asked to babysit for these next coming up advanced awards? Alright, the next is about, don't say yes to anybody unless you check with me first. I'll call you tomorrow.
I don't think that's fair.
Well, I'll call you tomorrow and arrange. There's some things coming up in the ward that I want to go to. Saturday, we're going to go to Northern Religion. So Saturday.
I won't be here Saturday or Friday.
Saturday night?
Yeah, Saturday night.
You'll be here Saturday night. Okay, we got you then for Saturday night.
Wait a minute. Will you just be getting home? Will you feel like babysitting Saturday night?
I guess.
Well, listen, think about it, would you? And give us a call, either way.
I'm going on that camping thing and I have to fix my high school.
You might be pretty tired.
Yeah.
See, it starts when, on the 8th?
I'm not sure. I'll call her and let her know.
I'll call you as soon as I can.
Do you have our phone numbers?
Yeah.
Oh, she's bigger.
Can't get us at home. Call us at work. We're there late sometimes.
How cute.
You can run Pam to the door and I'll stay here with you. Kids. Say tickle, 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 tickle.
Sarah,
Oh, she.
thinks you can
Oh, she's done that. Oh, she tries it all the time. Uh-oh, where's Daddy? Where's Daddy doing? Why do you want your daddy? You haven't seen Mommy this evening. You gonna give Mommy a big love? Oh, she's gonna throw a fit. Say, C is for cookie, and that's enough for me. You go. You. You. Uh-oh.
I'm glad I got my homework done before I came. Because last night I got so sick I had to babysit the kids. My mom babysitted.
Oh, is she?
I babysitted Monday.
How long are you babysitting from?
4 to 10. You're going to fall out.
I'll grab them in. Thank you.
I'm not behind you. Go ahead and shut it.
Uh-oh, where's Pam going? Look. Where's our Daddy and Pam going? Look, there's Daddy. Look, Daddy. Call Daddy. Where'd Daddy go?
C is for cookie, and that's enough for me. C is for cookie.
Josh, sing your grand old flag. You're a grand old flag, you're a high flying flag. Oh, let's sing. Let's sing this song. No, Mommy just want everything to get over. Who's that? Sarah? Hey, with that stick you're gonna have to pull it. No, because you know why? You're poking. Oh, where's Daddy? Look for Daddy. Daddy coming? No. Oh, look for Daddy. Where's Daddy? Daddy.